Hey guys, Darren Clay, Coach of Wiser Pods, and welcome back to another episode of Trade Mode. Heading into round 15. 2 more weeks of the buys remaining, round 15, round 16. It seems like this week's going to be pretty easy for most, just with not many fantasy relevant options on the buy this week. We've got the likes of Adelaide, Hawthorn, Melbourne, and West Coast on the buy this week. So when you look at those teams, you probably only have the likes of Dawson and Rankin being from Adelaide, and then also Melbourne and from Petrarca and Gorn from Melbourne as well. So only probably four relevant options in fantasy. So that realistically means we're not going to have super amount of people on the buy, and probably means we're going to have pretty strong teams overall this week, where you probably are fielding a fairly decent side with 18 very really solid players. Sorry. So, but the one thing I wanted to quickly touch on is that we're 1 week away from the round 16 buy, which is, quote unquote, the hardest buy of so far this year. We all know that there's a lot of premium options that are really on that buy. Without touching on names, most people probably have five, if not six premiums on that buy at the moment. So this week, you probably should be leaning towards trying to prioritize and try and prepare your team for next week, so that ideally you should be trading out players that are from your round 16 and try and get them out of your team so you have less players next week. So that doesn't mean you have to trade your premiums. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but definitely start to trade at least those rookies that are maxing out. You get Clarks, your Lomans, if you have those two, are prime examples that can potentially go this week to really minimize your numbers next week and continue to move your team forward. So that's all I really wanted to touch on, just in terms of the buys. But yeah, let's get into today's video. Obviously, it's trade mode, so we are going through all the trade out targets and also the trade in targets for this week. So let's start with the trade out targets, as we always do. For some reason in defenders, but my top 5 trade out targets this week, obviously number 1 has to be Levi Ashcroft. His time has finally come. Probably a few weeks too late, given how good he's been so far this season. Made a shocking amount of cash, 386k so far this season. Did drop back that nearly 50k from last week, which is a little bit frustrating. Didn't finish the way that we sort of hoped him to do, just with a 39, his lowest score so far this season by a long shot. So that's pretty disappointing. Probably should have gone a week ago, if not 2 weeks ago from there. So, oh well, it is what it is. That's just what happens with rookies. You can never get too comfortable with these rookies, unfortunately. You just got to make what you can, trade him when you can. That makes sense, right? So he is obviously number 1. He's going for me this week, no matter what. So yeah, big thank you to Levi Ashcroft for what he's done so far this season. Obviously been a huge rookie so far this season, but his time is up. So he is one that easily goes. Huge amount of money in his head, 714k, as I said. So it's not a huge jump to those big guys. A lot of people are shopping in that sort of 900k bracket, with a few of those cheaper, underpriced, Jason Francis, a Sarong sort of vibe. They're all probably only 200k from an Ashcroft, so it's pretty simple to get that upgrade done. Or you could even do what I'm sort of doing, is going a Levi Ashcroft down to a McKercher, or even a sideways to a Caleb Mills, who's a pretty popular option this week. So there's a lot of flexibility that you have with Levi Ashcroft, so he's a prime number 1 target to be jumping off this week. That's why he sits there at number 1 for me. Number 2, I do have Lindsay here. Now, he has very similar reasons. Obviously, he's been a pretty good rookie for the most part of this season. Been a bit of a roller coaster, with his injury early in the season. Started like a house on fire with, 280 plus scores, had the injuries, and then slow to come back, sort of got his feet under himself again, but yeah, just really couldn't keep the consistency, which is pretty typical for those sort of players that we see out on the wing. So not surprising realistically, but yeah, probably again held on to him too long. 2 scores in the sub 30 are not what we wanted to see from him. Dropped 40k last week, so yeah, a bit the sour taste there, but he is on his buy, so he is even more of a prime target to be jumping off, just not playing this week. He's not going to contribute to your numbers this week. But again, if you've got other targets that you need to jump off that are potentially going to lose money, I'd probably lean to that way, because like, at the end of the day, Levi Ashcroft, no, Lindsay, I keep going to say his first name, but I can never pronounce it right. Xavier Lindsay isn't going to lose money this week. So there is a world that you could hold him this week and then plan to trade him out next week. But either way, you want to make your plans. It's to move him off your side at some stage in the next 2 weeks. Number 3, I've got Will Ashcroft. Now, he's probably one that not a lot of people are talking about, but yeah, I think he's also a prime target to jump off with a lot of people being pretty heavy in the round 16 buy. He's also at 18%, which is pretty wild, I think. He's a prime target to jump off. He's done pretty badly in the past couple of weeks with a 61, even a 78, a couple of weeks prior to that. He does have Geelong this week, so I can see it being a bit of a bounce back game for him. I'm not going to lie, but do I expect him to drop money this week? Most likely. I don't think he's going to hit his 113 break even, and I think he's a prime target to jump off. If not this week, then definitely next week, because at the end of the day, he's not going to be part of that top of the line midfielders, which just quietly is ridiculously hard to sort of predict at the moment, just being so inconsistent. But I think he's probably maxed out his prices. Well, moved 76k. He probably hasn't been an amazing pick, but he's definitely been a worthwhile pick considering the inconsistencies in the midfield. So, but I think he's one that you can jump off. Again, huge amount of money in his head. Easy sideways to those guys that are going to be in those question marks. Okay, are they going to be part of the top 8 for the remainder of the year? And also to just think Brisbane's run is pretty tough. Obviously this week isn't too bad, but it is at GMHBA, which obviously is a pretty tough ground to score on. Port Adelaide after the bye, Carlton, Western Bulldogs are all very tough. The only easy one that I see here off the rip is just the Gold Coast Suns. This is the only easy matchup for the remainder of the year. So realistically, you're not holding him for just that one matchup. So it's probably his time to go. So he is number 3 for me. Number 4, I've done a bit of shithousery and I've just gone any red dot that you have in your side. So this can be the likes of a who is it? Could be a Moraes. Could even be a Loman. He's not a red dot, but it's a pink dog, so pretty much close to that. Marek, I probably should have had him on my list. I didn't even think about him, to be honest. Connor Stone, prime target there. Max Hall, I think he's still playing, but yeah, it's probably time to go as well if you still had him. I'm trying to think if who else has a buy. Bias probably is going to be red dot with a lot of those guys coming back. Moraes definitely can go. Caden Cleary is still a prime target that can go as well. He has a huge break even, so if you can jump off him, that would be ideal. Obviously, if you have these guys that are sort of premiums that are not playing, they need to go priority to all these sort of guys anyway. So there at number 4, just to jump off those guys and pretty much get all the money off your bench into your field to maximize your 22 coming out of the buys in a few weeks. That's pretty much the idea of these final couple weeks, to get all that money off your bench and get it onto your field to prioritize points to finish off the year. And number 5 is sort of an interesting discussion around 2 premiums that a lot of people are looking at this week to trade out, and that is Isaac Rankin and Max Gawn. I can vouch for both of these guys being traded out. Both of them have been on my plans to look at trading out for a period of time. Just with Rankin's poor performances over particularly probably last 6 weeks, hasn't gone above 90, is pretty poor. Even before that, he had a decent month before that, but realistically has been very hit and miss majority of the season. So pretty underwhelming, and he probably can go, to be honest. He's had a tougher run, I won't lie. Sydney, Brisbane Lions, Hawks. The Eagles, definitely no excuse. He should have definitely performed better than that. So that's pretty disappointing. Collingwood, very tough. And obviously Port Adelaide. So there are very tough matchups in there, I won't lie. Just the one outlier is the Eagles, which should have been a very nice matchup. Kick 2 behinds. If that was 3 goals, then it would have been a ton. You probably would say that's a decent mark. But he's just not spreading and getting those marks like he was at the start of the season. And obviously not tackling nearly as much now that he's not in the midfield. So just all leads to signs that he's not going to be the performer that we're looking for. Now, the question mark is, how much of a points upgrade can you get from him? Because at the end of the day, when you look at the forward lines mix in the top 6 range, who are sort of the guys that you can look at who are going to be a significant upgrade from a Rankin for the remainder of the season? And that's where I sort of get a bit confused, because there's not a huge amount of options. Obviously, you have the 3 main guys in Smith, Kennedy, and Nick Martin. Probably the only 3 that we're confident in are going to be 100 averaging plus players for the remainder of the year. besides that, it's really a bunch of question marks of who's going to be there or thereabouts, because realistically, there's a huge amount of guys that aren't performing as well as they probably should. So let's just go here and go average. Probably the best way to look at it. So clearly, those three guys are up there. Jack McRae, he started this year on fire, but really hasn't been in the greatest form, in the backyard before his injury. So again, came back with an 82, lower time on ground. So there's question marks there. Probably still waiting on him to start to return to some form. So I can see him part of that top 6 for the remainder of the year. Brian Myers obviously has been hitting a bit of a purple patch over the last 4 weeks, if not even the last 6 weeks particularly. He's obviously skyrocketed in price, about to hit that $1 million price tag, but he's got the bye next week, so you can't even look at him realistically. Luke Jackson, who's a very viable option that I'm particularly looking at this week, has been a very consistent 90 average player over the last 5 games. I know that obviously Sean Darcy's now back in the side, and that does change a bit of the dynamic, but still fairly confident that he gets the job done as a bit of a midfielder ruck rover at the same time. And then Petrarca, he's also been pretty underwhelming for what we sort of expect of him. His form over the last 6 weeks as well has been pretty underwhelming. Only one score under 80, so his floor is pretty high, but his ceiling just isn't there. So he's probably just on the brink. He's still probably just part of my top 6, and someone that I reckon a lot of people will be targeting coming out of his bye, because his run does start to improve from that. So Suns, number 1 easy matchup. North, I think, number 3 at the moment. I don't know why that clicked out of it. St Kilda are up there as well. Obviously, the Eagles, number 2 matchup easily. So, yeah, the run after the bye is definitely a worthwhile one to jump into. So, he's definitely one I'll be targeting post that bye. But then you got the guys like, obviously, Rankin, Warner, Caleb Daniel, Jason Horton-Francis. All these guys probably fall in that bracket of they're probably going to average, say, 90 to 95 and be there or thereabouts. So I think you can throw Isaac Rankin in that blanket, even though he's only been averaging 78 in the last 5 and 70 in the last 3. I do expect him to improve his scoring post his bye, just with some easier matchups. Like I said, Richmond, number 1 matchup pretty much anywhere. Melbourne are an easy matchup in terms of they just allow a lot of open space and they get a lot of marks, particularly for halfbacks, but I think Rankin could use his agility to get out in space as well. Suns, obviously, a very easy matchup as well, and obviously Eagles and North to finish off the year. So I do expect him to have some decent scores to finish off the year. So I can advocate both ways to trade him out and try and get a points upgrade if you're missing one of those big guys. But I'm just not sure if I'm going to get the biggest upgrade when I'm just moving, say, a Rankin to the likes of a Jack McRae or such. You're probably not going to get a huge amount of upgrade there. Maybe you're talking 5 or 10 points at most. So probably not the biggest upgrade in terms of points on field. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not really sure I'm sitting there at this point in time. Also, he doesn't have much money on his head. He's already dropped that 100k over the last period of time, so you're pretty much paying bottom dollar for him. Like I said, I expect him to improve his output soon, so he could even be a buy-in option at some point in the next couple of weeks. So I think I'll switch my mentality a little bit to hold him, but like I said, I can see why people are jumping off of him. He was in my trade plans before the round, and he even when first lockout lifted, he was traded out. I've had a bit more of a tinker around and play around and found something I'm a bit more comfortable with. So yeah, we'll see how that sort of goes later in the video. But yeah, I think Isaac Rankin can definitely go. Let's get back to where we were before I wandered off, as I usually do. Max Gawn. Now, he is a huge topic point on every podcast I'm listening to. It's like a half an hour session of just talking about Max Gawn. So he's obviously a massive talking point. Obviously, there's a lot of things in favour of trading him out. And my initial thoughts when lockout lifted, I was like, nah, I can't be trading that Max Gawn. He's the highest averaging player in the year. Looking at how high he's been performing over the last 2-3 months, he's just been unreal. Even in some tougher matchups, you can't even actually see tough matchups. He's just had such a good run when you look back in hindsight. The only tough one I see was obviously Brisbane Lions, but I guess Darcy Fort didn't really put up much of a challenge. So that's unusual considering Dusty Foot has been a bit tougher recently, but Oscar McInerney definitely would have been a much tougher matchup for him. Darcy Cameron's an orange matchup, but he just gets the job done against him. So yeah, realistically, he's had a very good run over the last period of time, and now he's really entering that tough stage where he's got these three matchups particularly that are really tough, and you could argue that what I see him averaging over the next 3 weeks in these matchups is probably 100 if I'm being nice. More than likely it'd be closer to that 90 range because you just got to consider what he scored early in the year. He's already played the Suns and also played North as well early in the season, and he scored a 63 and an 84. So saying he's going to be a 100 averaging player for those 3 weeks is probably a bit on the luxury side. Realistically, it could be a 90, if not even lower than that, depending on how the games sort of go. So but the thing I should mention is that the games are getting a lot more contested now. Obviously, bodies are getting pretty tired. We're getting to the colder months, so there's a lot less freedom around. So they're playing a little bit more contested. And we're seeing that in the hitouts. You know, he only had 27 hitouts and 30 hitouts in those 2 games early in the year. He hasn't gone pretty much below 30 at all so far in the past 3 months. Most in hitting a couple 40 pluses, right? So it's showing that the contested game is improving. So I could see a world where he does bump up his scoring a little bit from those matches early in the season. So I'm not expecting an exact replica of those scores that we saw earlier. So when I think that he's going to be, say, an average 100 average player, he's going to drop 100k over the next 3 weeks and have a huge break even the following couple of weeks as well, going into TDK and then also into Royal Marshall, who are also very capable ruckmen. TDK currently is a hard ruckman ranking, but when I look back at the scores that have been against him, you know, you've had the likes of Royal Marshall at 116, and I think Brody Grundy went 111 against him as well. So capable ruckman can score against TDK, whereas, you know, the lesser ruckmen really do struggle. So I don't think Gawn will have any issues against TDK, and he'll start to improve from there on it then. So realistically, we're just looking at these next 3 scores. So I can advocate for trading him out. I'm even looking at something doing that myself just to free up that coin, because at the end of the day he's probably going to lose 100k if not even a little bit more in the next month of football. So it's a really creative way to free up some coin, because it doesn't cost you much to be able to free up 100, 200k, even 300k to then get an easy upgrade on the other side and really make some flexibility with your trades this week particularly. So it's a creative way of looking at it to really improve your side. So yeah, there's avenues of doing it, and I can advocate for both sides, because at the end of the day, what if Max Gawn just improves well over the next 3 weeks and he's still the number 1 or number 2 averaging player for the year, and it backfires really quickly. So if I was, say, in the top 100 right now and I was fighting for a hat or fighting for a car, I would very strongly not do this role, because I can see it backfiring quite quickly. It would take a very risky, bold play to go against the grain and trade him out and try and get points on field this week, which, you know, you try and maximize your points everywhere, but I think long term you want him for the final couple months of football, where he's got Eagles, Tim English, Meek, easy matchup. Obviously, he does very well against Darcy Cameron. Royal Marshall's easy matchup, and TDK typically is an easy matchup as well. So for those final 6 weeks, you probably want him, right? So I think if you can endure the 3 weeks of pain the next 3 weeks and improve your side elsewhere for this week particularly, then I think you'll come out in front slightly. So yeah, it could go both ways. So I can advocate for both. But that's probably enough summary on Max Gawn. He will be definitely someone that a lot of people trade out. 5k coaches are trading him out so far. I'll talk about some options that you should look to trade. If you are trading him, what options will be the best to go to later in this video. But continuing down the line, Christian Petrarca, I'm not a fan of trading him out. Like I said, with the run that comes after the bye, particularly for midfielders, is really good. You know, Suns number 1 matchup. North, I think number 2 matchup or number 3. Carlton aren't too bad. St Kilda aren't too bad either. And obviously Eagles as well. So it just really depends if you see any tag options going to him, because he is sort of that number 1 tag option at Melbourne alongside Cozzy Pickett as well. I just don't see any tag options becoming those particular 3 weeks. Sorry. Uh, Chin Cotter, maybe. I don't think we're seeing a huge amount of roles from him so far. He went to Merit one week, but I don't think we saw anything from him last week. But it was against, I think, West Coast or something like that. So no real need to tag there. Uh, what's his name? Windhager, potential target as well. So we've got to be careful of those options, right? So yeah, consider those. But I probably wouldn't be trading him out, although he has been poor. I still see him as part of that top 6 for the remainder of the year. Boxall, I probably wouldn't be trading him out either, even though he has been a red dot for the last weeks. I think there has been some news out of St Kilda that they're going to look to play the rookies and the kids for the remainder of the year, so that could mean a Boxall comes back in. We know his pedigree is quite good, and he is a pretty good scorer. So if he gets a chance in that midfield for an extended period of time, we know he can score quite well. We just need to see a big ticking up in his time on ground, because 49% is not going to cut it. He needs to have 70, if not 80, would be much nicer. He can push that 70, if not 80, averaging player for a period of time and be a good cash generation. So I'd be inclined to hold him. Fingers crossed his name this week, and yeah, you can make that decision later on. I think it's way too late for people looking. Oh, I'm trying to look at trade. Oh, I am looking at trade outs. Yeah, sorry. Angus Clark can go. I already mentioned him. He's pretty much maxed out the price now, unless he has a bit of a pop score on Thursday night against Fremantle, which I don't think will happen. He's gone pretty much at 40, 55 over the last 3, so yeah, pretty poor. I think he's pretty much maxed out. Maybe only missing 20 or something, 20k or something like that. So yeah, he can go, especially that improves your buy structure for next week. Riley Hardiman has been a bit of a failed pick over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, after his buy, a lot of people traded him in. It hasn't worked out. Has he gone backwards in price? No, he just went up in price last week. So yeah, jump off him. He's got a good amount of money in his head. He's going to start going backwards this week as well. He just lost that role, unfortunately. It didn't really paying up for him anymore. So he can go. I spoke about those two. Josh Dunkley is a very interesting one. I think he hold this week just with the Geelong matchup. See if he can recover some of his dignity for a period of time, and then make that decision next week. He's potentially going to be traded next week for me if he doesn't improve. Yeah, he's just not getting the job done and dropping like a rock in terms of price. He'll be under 900k next week, so potentially he's going to be a pretty prime target for people to pick up at some stage if he returns to form, because we know how good he can be. He is a very capable fantasy player, but like I said, his run home is pretty damn poor for midfielders. I can probably even show you that here. Is a bit better of a light. Port Adelaide, Carlton, Western Bulldogs, only 2 green matchups to finish off the year with 4 tougher ones, so and 2 neutral ones. So really not the greatest run to finish off the year. So he can potentially go if you want to jump this week. I'm not going to stop you, but I think he should perform better. I keep saying that though. He probably won't, to be honest. He probably does a bit of a matchup with Bailey Smith. So we'll see how that sort of plays out. Kyle Lerman can go. Merritt can go. John Dawson I would not be trading out. That's just ludicrous in my opinion. Unless you see a massive drop-off for the remainder of the year. But heading into Richmond after the bye is just primed for him to go 130, if not 140. So definitely wouldn't be doing that. Besides that, we're getting into some very unique territory. So all these sort of guys can go. I think that'll pretty much do it. I've already spent 25 minutes on trade out targets, which is far too long in my opinion. I had to talk about something in there. So let's move into the trade in targets for this week. And again, I will start with, where do we want to start? Let's start with the Ruckman, because this is where a lot of people are looking, obviously, with the Max Gawn situation. So if I was trading Max Gawn this week, which potentially I may be, potentially I may not be, if I was trading him and I was just going straight to another Ruckman, I'd probably going to Rowan Marshall, because that is by far the safest option. He has a pretty decent run. It's not amazing. I don't think any of these ruckmen particularly have amazing runs to finish off the year. I know Brodie Grundy's has been spoken about as being pretty damn good, but he still has 2 tougher matchups to finish off the year with Cherry and whether that's Oscar McInerney or it's at RC Fort, they're also pretty tough. So 2 tough matchups for Brodie Grundy. You look at the likes of Rowan Marshalls, he only has 2.5, so you got 1 tougher one this week with a Darcy Cameron, who's an orange matchup. Then he's also got Cherry and Gorn in that period. So his runs also fairly equally as good, in my opinion. Cherry's run is slightly a bit harder. Where is he? If I can get this lined up. There is 3 tougher matchups in TDK, who, again, I'm still a bit questionable if that's a tough matchup or not. We know that the capable ruckman can score against him, so I'm expecting Cherry to go pretty well this week. Max Gawn and obviously Riley O'Brien, who is one of the toughest, if not the toughest matchup. So again, very capable, a very decent run overall. So I couldn't really argue out of the fact that all 3 of these guys have very similar runs. I couldn't really identify one having better than the others. Maybe Grundy's is slightly better just based off the ranking here and obviously the bright green matchups. But the security in Errol Marshall, who has been the top averaging player for the past 2 years, is probably a much safer thing to go with. In my opinion, that's why he sits at my number 1. So that's where I sit with that. The only, I guess, flag I have with that, with obviously the statement that they're going to play the kids more, does that mean that he's going to be chopped out of the ruck a little bit more? Does he get a rest at some point? Yeah, it's just there's a few flags when it comes to that statement, what they mean by that. Because obviously, he is potentially looking at being traded at the end of the year, particularly if they're targeting Tom de Koning still. If they get him, where does that leave Ron Marshall? Does he go somewhere else? So, yeah, it could be something that they look to shift him off, and that could mean he spends a bit of time outside of their AFL side for a period of time just to rest him and whatnot. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So that's only the flag with him, but again, I still think he's the safest option. Cherry, number 2, again, very safe option, very capable ruckman, but you are paying a significant amount, $1.1 million, so you're not really getting that benefit of trading out Max Gawn, only getting about 100k. 100k is nice, but it's not a huge amount to do a lot with. But obviously, is obviously very, very, very capable, and again, probably not the matchup that you're looking for this week. Brodie Grundy is the interesting one, as a lot of people are looking at doing it with 2.1k coaches this week. Now, he has been elite over the last 5 weeks, as we have seen. He hasn't gone below 110. A couple easier matchups in there, obviously against Todd Goldstein, TDK, as I mentioned, but he has had 2 tougher ones in Max Gawn and Riley O'Brien, and got 2 120 plus scores in there. It's just so hard to identify why his scoring has really picked up. Like, a time on ground is nice to see, but he was doing that early in the season and he wasn't really getting it done. So I'm struggling to see whether he's just been given a bit more of a license to get the ball out, be a bit more ferocious in there because he's getting his tackle numbers slightly a bit higher, or he's just getting a bit more of the rub of the green by getting a lot of free kicks. Maybe his ruck craft has improved just slightly. So it's difficult to say exactly if this is going to be sustainable, and that's the reason why he's lower down on this list. Just because I'm not 100% sure. I was a starter of him back last year once he was in his first season at the Sydney Swans. Obviously priced much cheaper than what he was at now, but he was such a tough watch. He just couldn't get it done, spent too much time on the bench, and just, wasn't scoring the way that we are used to seeing prime Brodie Grundy going at. Obviously, he's on the wrong side of 30 now, but there's definitely worse options that you could go to rather than Brodie Grundy with the run and with his price range at this point in time. So he's there at number 3, just with the like I said, the run, his form's there as well, and so he is an option, but it's not the safest option in my opinion. Definitely a bit risky. Again, if I was in the top 100, I don't think I could go to Brodie Grundy because it could definitely derail your season very quickly if he was to perform badly. But it is a very nice matchup to start this week, obviously against either Jordan Sweet or Vizentini, or even if both of them. I don't think it really matters either way. He should have a decent week. So, definitely an option. Tim English is number 4 there. Decent matchup this week, but his run is probably the toughest of the lot. If I go back to that list, he has Cherry, O'Brien, and Darcy Ford, or Oscar McInerney, and then also Max Gawn later in the year. So his run's actually the worst out of all 4 of those options, so that's why he's down there. But surprisingly, he's the 2nd highest averaging ruckman so far this year, which is unreal to think about how good of his pick he has been this season, considering he was priced pretty well down on what he's been previously. So, and obviously a lot of us paid up for these top ruckmen, but yeah, he's been a great option. So I just don't think he's one that we're looking at for the remainder of the year anymore. So that is the 4 ruckmen in that order. So hopefully that answers your questions about them. You're not going to TDK or Darcy Cameron or any sort of guys. I think you're losing too many points in that field for them for that period of time. So yeah, definitely looking at some other options. Alrighty, we'll we'll go to the midfield because I think not a lot of people are shopping in this area this week, particularly because, quite frankly, I think we're all just avoiding mids at this point because mids have been so poor this year with just such inconsistency. There's such a big line between the very top guys, your Dawsons and your Brayshaws being the star players out there, and those next sort of guys that are super inconsistent. Your Dunkleys, who was sort of part of that top group before the last month or so. Then you've got, Caleb Sarong, George Hewitt, who was up there, has dropped off. Bontempelli before the last couple of weeks was up there, but now he's gone. Obviously started the year injured and all that sort of stuff. So realistically, I think we're just avoiding these guys as much as possible besides the top guys. So yeah, I'll speak about them soon. So trade-in options. Number one, if you don't have him, I think is sort of a must-have to finish off the season, and that is Andy Brayshaw. He's got a good matchup this week against Essendon, obviously coming off a big 136. Very decent run over the next 3 weeks, particularly. I don't see tags coming his way. I still think they go to Caleb Sarong, but there's potential that, Windhager stands next to Brayshaw and obviously James Jordan as well. So it will be interesting to see how that sort of plays out. So if you were too concerned or you're confident that was going to Brayshaw, then potentially you could avoid. But that sort of leads into why Caleb Sarong is down there at number 3 for me, and someone that I wasn't too keen on trading in last week. He didn't even make my top 5. Obviously, he went big with that 146. It's just because I think he has tag targets coming his way pretty shortly. Like, Essendon this week could even put a Setterfield on him. Obviously, it probably would have been a Durham before he got suspended, but Setterfield can definitely do that job as well. Obviously, I spoke about Windhager and then James Jordan at the same time. So potentially three tags coming in the next 3 weeks is definitely a flag that I don't typically would on trade into, especially for someone that has been underperforming pretty massively throughout the entire season. Dropped a couple 60s, a lot of 80 minuses, so it's not great. So he's not been someone that I'm hugely in favour of, but I can see the appeal. Under $1 million, skyrocketed last week, going up 61k with that big score. But I could definitely see him coming back down to earth pretty quickly this week. So that's them two covered off. Surprisingly, looking at all the options that we have in the midfield, Bontempelli still is my number 2 option, even off that really poor score last week of 50. I don't see a tag coming his way for a little bit of time now. I don't see how James Jordan can do anything to a Bont. He's just not the same sort of build. I think you should be able to push him off fairly easily, so I just don't see that happening. If anything, it's probably going to be a row bottom that does a bit of a defensive work on him, but probably not a huge tag role as such. So I think Bontempelli is a very good option. And if you have to look at his price alone, not look at his break even. If you're asking me if I could get Bontempelli for sub million dollars, priced at just under 100, I believe, then I'd take that every day of the week. So that's what I'm looking at, not so much the break-even side of things. It's really looking at what you're paying for him when you're looking at these premium guys. Although you could argue if you wait a couple more weeks, you could get him for a bit cheaper. I understand that argument. So, but I still think he's number 2. Like I said, decent run for a period of time. Richmond, North, Essendon, West Coast, Fremantle, even Melbourne back there. Decent run at home. So yeah, but definitely a worthwhile option at number 2. Number 4, this guy has destroyed my season. Honestly, I feel like if I started my season with Adam Chera, I would have been in a much different position because he's gone up 250k this year, averaging 100. Probably, arguably, part of the top 8 midfielders with how consistent he has been for a period of time. Only dropped below 80 once this year, which is pretty crazy. Honestly, thought he would have been injured by now. Decent matchup this week, even next week with Port Adelaide being a bit of an easy one recently. Even the run home isn't too bad. Melbourne, Gold Coast Suns, Essendon, Adelaide again, Port Adelaide again. So yeah, very, very capable of being one that you could trade into. He is getting very expensive now though, so he's nearly $1 million. But with the likes of Walsh out for a period of time, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. That just frees up more points for Adam Chera on the outside, where they did target Walsh here and there, obviously being that sort of fourth midfielder doing a bit more of the outside work. Adam Chera is just able to free up a little bit more to get those plus sixes, which we saw was pretty evident on the weekend against the Eagles. He got 9 marks, so I'm pretty confident that he will be a very good option that a lot of people can look at if you don't own him. He is 17%, so I think most of the competition, or at least most of the competition that are competing, obviously have him. And if you held him through the buys, it's been a very good hold. So he is there at number 4 for all those sort of reasons. Nick Dacos is number 5, and I think it was more just a discussion point. I don't think you're trading into him this week, just with a Windhager tag more than likely coming his way. Very similar body type, similar height structure, and I think he can sort of run with him. So I don't think you're trading into someone that's going to potentially put up a sub 80, because that's pretty much what happens with with Nick Dacos. When he gets tagged, he gets a pretty bad score, like an 80. But when he's not tagged is when he goes that 120 plus. So he's very up and down. There's no in between. He has not hit a score between 90 and 120. He's just so up and down. So I think you avoid this week if you can. Hit next week where you got the Eagles, where there's no matchup. Colton, interesting one, whether Chin Cotter goes alongside him. I think we've seen that one in the past. So that's a bit concern, but I don't think you want to miss out on the Eagles matchup particularly. So that could be a huge 140. Obviously, Suns a very good matchup. Freo are middle of the table. Richmond, obviously, very good run of next period of time. So you want to target him very, very shortly, but probably avoiding this week. But if you're stuck for options and you just don't know who to pick, I'm not going to stop you from going him this week particularly. So that is my top 5. I guess some other options a lot of people are potentially looking at. Obviously, if I can find just midfield, George Hewitt. He probably could have snuck into my top 5 as well. Definitely was a good candidate. Could have been gone for Chera. Obviously with Walsh, same situation. Just more availability in that midfield. Just freeing up a few more CBAs. Decent run. We saw his form to start the year was elite. Had a bit of a poorer month before the bye, but looks like he's bounced back pretty well in some very nice matchups. Obviously does a lot of tackling, but also gets out on the outside and does some of the marking as well. So I think it's a very good option. Not paying an overly huge amount now that he's down at 900k. He's about to rise up as well. So yeah, it's probably a pretty good time to jump on him if you want to go there. I just don't know about the consistency. He could drop off, or he could go the other way very quickly. Zach Butters, I'm still not a huge fan. Obviously went sub 100 last week, so that's sort of leaning in the right direction. But again, James Jordan potentially tagger this week. Whether that goes to him or it goes to a Rosie, who probably plays a bit more of a like-for-like matchup, being a half forward or being a half back. We'll see. But yeah, definitely could be one there. And Chin Cotter, again, whether that happens or not, definitely could. So again, I'm probably not trading into someone that's going to have a tag in the next week or two, particularly that could ruin him. It's still a higher break even, so he's not probably getting away from me this week. I don't see him doing a big 130. That means he's going to skyrocket in price, so I think I can wait another week to jump on him. So waiting on that one. And the final one that I also wanted to touch on, if he's even part of this group, I don't think many people are doing it because it would be very risky. But Gordon is potentially going to be back this week. 69 coaches are doing it. But he's obviously hugely priced. He's definitely someone that we want to keep an eye on because we know how good he can be. And I just want to see what role he plays. But yeah, obviously coming back from injury, he may have a bit limited time on ground. He may not even play this week, so we'll have to wait and see. So just I wanted to mention, just keep an eye on him as he returns for his first couple of games. So that is the midfielders done. Let's go to the forwards real quick and get these done. Don't think many people are shopping here too much, but Matthew Kennedy is still my number 1 target. Just want to take a drink here real quick. Yeah, Matthew Kennedy is still my number 1 target if you don't own him. He's got the Richmond Tigers matchup, so he should have a pretty good field day there. Obviously, he hits the scoreboard pretty well, so I'm expecting another 110 plus score from him. Yes, he's priced at about that 110 now, so you're pretty much paying for what you're going to get. But considering the gap between him and the next sort of line of top forward guys, I think it's worthwhile jumping on him. So I think that's why he's still there at number one. I think he's been my number one forward option for the last 3 weeks. I don't think next week I'll be putting him in there just because I think most people in the competition will own him at that point. Luke Jackson, though, at number two is a very cheeky option that I am absolutely loving the likes at the moment because he is playing a very luxury role where he is playing as the second ruckman, or we call second ruckman at Fremantle, but then he's also playing as a bit of a ruck rover at the same time, getting a few CBAs as a midfielder. So he's around the ball pretty consistently. He's obviously very athletic, loves a mark around the ground, even kicking a few goals up forward when he does float forward here and there. So I just love what he's doing, averaging pretty much over 90 in his last 5. A very nice run, which I'll probably show you here for Ruckman particularly. So he's got Essendon, who is a very green matchup regardless, but could be up against Vizentini, their debutant this week as a solo ruck. So that is obviously a very nice matchup. Marshall next week. Again, whether that's Marshall or not, we'll wait and see, find out. Brody Grundy and then Lloyd Meek. 4 very, very nice matchups. And then you've obviously got West Coast and Port Adelaide later on in the season as well. So I think he's a very viable option that he's going to be a top 6 forward for the remainder of the year in this sort of ruck rover role. I think he can get it done. He's a pretty big tackler in there as well. And obviously, like I said, he does know how to mark around the ground when he's on his game, which he has been a very high ranking player throughout the season as well. So I think he can get it done. If you avoid his injury games, obviously that's 74, and obviously coming back from injury, he's still doing that. He hasn't dropped below 90, which is pretty ridiculous. So, yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and probably one I'm trading into. And it's also just a nice luxury, is that he can be someone that covers you Max Gorn this week. You can flick him into your ruck line, and then you can potentially hold a Gorn or something like that. So he's a very nice, unique one that you can jump on that, again, could be a top 6 forward for the remainder of the year with the run and the role, but also one that covers your ruck line this week, particularly if you're a Gaunt owner. So I do love him as a number 2 option there. But I will say he's not ultimately cheap. He is, 930k. So you're pretty much paying for what you expect, unless you expect him to slightly improve. He's probably priced at about that 94. So if you think he can go 100, definitely some very valid points there. So number 3, Jason Horne-Francis, obviously coming back from injury last week. Now I would have him higher if I was if I was confident on his role, right? The concerning thing I have with him is that he only played like 2 CBAs on the weekend, which is not the role I expected from him. He played purely off half forward, got a lot of marks, and sort of pushed into the stoppage off half forward. So that could mean good things, but could also mean bad things for him. Obviously, he's a super inconsistent player, as we've seen at the start of the year. Probably was a bit of a failed pick, going out probably about 85 to start the year when he was priced at 90, so he sort of lost a bit of value. But I can see a world where he does improve, just not having as much of the ball work he has to do on the inside. Obviously, hitting the scoreboard a bit more with 1 goal 3. That could have been absolutely massive if he kicked straight, but he's not the most accurate kick in the world. So, yeah, I love him as a pick. Obviously, he's super cheap for what he's at. 818k, priced at about 83, I believe. So, yeah, he's a very viable option. He's going to be part of that group that I think can be a 90 to 95 averaging player for the remainder of the year and be part of that question mark top 6. So, yeah, for the price you're paying, definitely worthwhile. Sydney this week, bit of a tougher matchup. Looking at his run, it's not the greatest, I will say that. Carlton, Brisbane Lions, a couple of tougher ones. Eagles, very nice. Hawks, tough. Adelaide, tougher. It's really not the greatest run if I'm looking at it, to be honest. So all those sort of factors in, that's why he's a bit lower on my list, but it's still a very viable option to go to. Sam Darcy at number 4 is a very, very interesting pick, who is someone that I have honestly looked at, but I think to run him for the remainder of the season is a big question mark. Obviously, he's got a pretty long history of injuries so far this in his career. So I'm just questioning whether he can actually maintain his ability over the next, 2-3 months of final football. So I'm just not sure that's going to be the case. And particularly if Western Bulldogs are going to be making finals, they're pretty close and they're going to be pushing, particularly with a few easy matchups to finish off the year. There's going to be a period of time where they potentially look at resting him, whether that's in game or even potentially missing an entire game. So, yeah, I'm just not confident that he's going to be sticking around for the entire period of these next couple months to finish off the year. Although I do think he can be a very good option, because if you subtract his pretty injured scores, obviously that 8, he's averaging about 95, which is pretty ridiculous. Obviously, he kicks bags all the time. He's probably, if he's not already, he's definitely the most damaging forward in the competition, and probably going to be for a long period of time, just because his reach is unreal. No one can defend him. But obviously, he's going to have a very, very good matchup this week. I expect him to fully go a 130 this week. Probably kicks 6 or 7 very easily. I think he has a matchup with Noah Bolter. I just don't think you'll have him for the height. Potentially the athleticism, definitely, but not the height at all. Tom McCarthy will be a bit of a tougher one for him. I think when they versed last year, he only dropped at 47. So again, it could be a very up and down for these key forwards. So yeah, that's where I'm sort of leaning away from him a little bit, because I can see days where he's going to struggle a fair bit. North, whether Charlie Comden is potentially back and does a bit of a role there, or even Aiden Kerr could maybe go with him. It would be interesting to see, but he'll get plenty of supply in there, so he should have another very decent game. Mark Keane for Adelaide, or even I think it's a Warren, something like that. Could definitely go with him. So yeah, I can see good days and I can see some bad days coming his way. So that's why I sort of lean away from these key forwards as much as possible. While I think it could be a very unique option, I just don't think you're going to get the long term payoff in that respect. I think you'll get payoff this week, but definitely not throughout the remainder of the season. So for those reasons, I'm just not super keen, but still a viable option with that price range and obviously the matchup. So there is that one. And then finally, I just had Jack Macrae, another week off his injury. Definitely a one that I think can be part of the top 6 forwards, but up against Collingwood, who is number 2, I think, toughest matchup for the year. So yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to see a good result from him this week particularly. So again, probably one I'll wait on a few more weeks. So we'll see how that sort of goes. I think that's pretty much about it though for forwards. I'm really not looking at too many others. Like Graham Wise would be a very nice option, but you can't be trading into him this week with the bye next week. That's just ludicrous. Nick Martin, if you don't have him, I think 90% of the competition have him already, so he's easily one that you should have. And that's about it, realistically. So yeah, that's pretty much about done. One thing I did miss was the downgrade targets. Now I should quickly touch on that before I do forget, as I do sometimes. Now this, I'll quickly talk off the top, is that the downgrade targets this week aren't great. If you don't have the likes of a Johnson or a McCarthy already, I think you're easily just targeting one of them and you just get it out of the way, because a week in fantasy is a long time. There's no guarantee that next week you can easily pick up a Tom McCarthy. If we have, a few bullets come our way or something else happens, there's no chance that you may not be able to get him. And I'm pretty confident that he'll be there next week. So you might as well pick him up this week, because there's no point taking a risk on a rookie that you're not confident with. That could potentially become a red dot, even a brown dot, pretty quickly. So I'm pretty confident that you're just picking up Tom McCarthy this week if you don't own him already. I think 95% of the competition already have Johnson, if you know what I mean. So I think he should be fine. So if you don't have him, you're jumping on him. Negative 33 break even. Even though he does have the round 16 bye, it's pretty unique to have such a player doing this amount of cash generation this late in the season. So definitely one that you just got to jump on, and hopefully it doesn't hurt your buy structure too much. Just going to take a bit of the hit. It'd very much surprise me if he drops a bad score this week, particularly Thursday night. So he's definitely one that could be part of your 18 this week. and he should go up, a fair chunk of money with a huge break even. So besides those two, it's really, really tough to sort of make a decision on who the next best is, and that's where I sort of struggle at the moment, just because there's no real clear option. Obviously, Harry Rollerston is sort of at my 3 there. Now, that's purely based on what role he plays. He plays as the third midfielder, particularly, obviously with a few injuries in there at the moment. But he did play it as a bit of a tagging role. I think it was on Lockie Neal. So that matchup played quite well into his hands. Whether that continues with obviously a Noah Anderson this week, who knows? I'm not super confident on that, because obviously they've got Bedford in there as well that can do that sort of job. So would be interesting to see how that plays out. But he had a pretty good break even at, I think it was -3. The only problem is obviously he has the round 16 bye as well. So if you're already heavy in that line, I probably wouldn't be paying up for him, even though his break even is decent. I'm not sure that his job security is that certain, and there's no guarantee that he'll be back post the bye. So you're probably getting him for 1 week, and what is going to make 300 get up to 300k, and that's about it. Probably not worth it in my opinion. So, but of the next bunch, it's realistically here's the best option. So here's one that you can look at. Liddy is there at number 4. Now, again, I have no confidence with any of these picks, but he's the one that has some decent junior numbers at Sandford, so he can put up a bit of a score. I think he averages about 80 last year at Central, so he does have that capacity to do really well, but not really playing the right role at the moment, playing as a bit of a half forward winger as they're sort of looking for at the moment. So yeah, again, he's a very low price, 245k, put up the 42 in his first game. Hopefully he can continue on the right way. So there's definitely worse options you can go to. So I don't mind you going to him. But besides that, I have no confidence in any of the other guys. And I know a lot of people are looking at an Archer May, but with Langford coming back and a few of the other Essendon boys on the return very shortly, if not after the bye, I just don't think he holds his spot. So I'm not looking at him at all. And I think that's about all the other options. And Alexandria would look okay, but it's still a very expensive rookie to jump into as a key defender. So, yeah, very very hard to jump on to him first weekend, even though he does have good junior numbers. So, I would rather wait on that one. But yeah, that is pretty much my downgrade targets this week. Now let's finish off the episode with looking at probably the most relevant options in the defensive line. Sorry, I think I always seem to get sick in these videos. I don't know why. Just get stuffy. So my defender options, trading in this week, number 5. So, whoops. What am I doing here? There we go. Get rid of that. Do that. There we go. All right. So my number 1 trade-in target this week for defenders has to be Kobe McKercher. Now, here's my number 1 option because he is just so far and beyond the underpriced as at the moment. He's sub 70 priced at, and he's potentially going to go at 85, if not even closer to 95. He scored that 85 last week in what was a very wet weather game where it was a bit sloppy. So to get 27 touches off the halfback is pretty impressive where the game was a bit more contested. So yeah, I think he's a very viable option. I'm getting him in this week, pretty straightforward. And the cash generation you're going to have from him is going to be very, very nice with where we are struggling at the moment. So I think he's definitely one that you should be prioritizing this week. The run isn't amazing. Obviously, Carlton, Hawthorn, Western Bulldogs, 3 tougher matchups. Melbourne will be a very nice one to get onto. Obviously, the Cats and then St Kilda as well. It's just whether he lasts that long. Obviously, he's a mid-pricer, and by that stage, we'll probably have a full, complete team of premium. So I think it's definitely one that you could use as a bit of a cash generator. Put up 80s, 85s, if not closer to 95, and be a very good option at what is a very small price, because you're only got to consider 2 400k rookies can get you up to a Kobe McKercher quite simply. So yeah, where we're struggling for cash generation at the moment, we've got all these sort of dead rookies. It's not hard to trade out 2 or if not 3 of them to get up to a Kobe McKercher and be your upgrade for the week. So he just has a lot of flexibility to your trade, so that's why he is number 1. Josh Dacos sits there at number 2. Now, he's probably the premium upgrade of the bunch this week. I've left a lot of the top line guys because I think my majority of us have them already. Your Nasai Wington Maliras, your Sinclairs, your Sheezels, your Rosies and stuff like that. I've left them all off because you should have them by now. If you don't have one of those guys, you're probably looking at them. So yeah, consider that. But I think Josh Dacos can be part of that group for a period of time. Just looking at the run, particularly if I go to go back to this, but go to wingers and defenders because he does sort of play a bit of a wing, bit of halfback, just chips around, but also pushes pretty high. So this is where I classify him more as. Here you go, St Kilda this week, very good matchup. West Coast, Carlton, bit of a tougher one, but then a Gold Coast for Richmond, even after that, is pretty good. So I really like his run, and I think he can improve his scoring output to be closer to that 105 averaging player for that period of time, and priced at, I think 93, 94, if not 95, actually. Yeah, I think he can definitely go close to 10 points above what he's priced at the moment. So, yeah, definitely a viable option at number 2. Number 3, Callum Mills. Now, I am a bit up and down with this pick because at first glance, I'm like, I'm not certain on what his role is going to be. Obviously, Roberts was out against the Richmond matchup where he did particularly well. Obviously, his time on ground obviously increased following his injury, so that's a good sign that he is now back to full fitness and he's going to play a full game. It's just I'm not sure what his role is going to be because he didn't play any CBAs, which is sort of what we expected with obviously the preseason work around him. He was said he was going to be playing as a midfielder, so I do expect that transition to come through eventually. Whether that's this week is definitely a potential. But there's definitely no certainty that that's what he's going to land at. He could even be a winger, who knows? So there is a bit of risk to this pick, but priced at, sub 80, and someone has gone at a 110 average when he's back in the midfield. Even when he's, off halfback, he can be a 90 averaging player like we saw last year. So I think it is risky because it could backfire quite quickly with obviously the injury history and whatnot. But I think he's a pretty safe option if he can find the right role and be a much closer to that 90 average because he is an accumulator. He knows how to find the ball. He's the captain of the club. Obviously, Sydney are struggling at the moment. If they are any hope to make finals, this man needs to stand up. So I am hopeful that he's able to do that, and he's definitely a viable option. And again, adds a lot of flexibility to your trades because very similar boat to McKercher. Not hugely priced. You can get a few rookies up to him quite easily. So if you're looking to get your last rookie off the field, he's a very viable option. It's definitely something I'd lean into. But I do have Kobe McKercher over him at this point, just because of the certainty around his role. And I think the scoring potential is a very similar potential, right? So there is that. That is Mills. Bergman, number 4. I've fallen away from this pick a little bit, but you can't argue what he's been doing over the last 5 weeks, averaging like 95 or something ridiculous like that. Just doing that tagging role, getting a lot of pull off halfback as well, plenty of marks. Not tackling as nearly as much as what I sort of want him to. Definitely would like that to bump up, but yeah, if you're looking to trade in someone and you don't have the money to get to anyone else, Mills is definitely a viable option. Low break even. Still increasing in price. Priced at about 82. Could be even more than that. If you think he can go 90, 95, it's still some points of value there. And someone that you could just look to hold on for a couple of weeks' time. And then hopefully by then your team's looking like it'll be full premiums anyway. And you can jump off him as a bit of a luxury move. So there's definitely worse picks in the world. I'll just be concerned slightly with what happens with Leah now being down. Does that mean Bergman has to go back and do a bit more of a lockdown role? We have seen that in the past, particularly last year, so I wouldn't rule that out entirely. So that's why he's down further down the list at 4. And then Bailey Dale at number 5. Now, it sort of backfired last week where I said he was a terrible option. Obviously, he's very hit and miss. I'm still going to stand on that ground. He is very hit and miss. He's had 4 60s so far this season. I won't argue that his run is pretty decent. I can't lie. But I just don't like it. I don't know why I don't like it. I do see him potentially being a 100 averaging player for a period of time with some very decent matchups. Obviously, it's a layup pick this week against Richmond. That's obviously a very nice option. Even North, a couple weeks' time is very good. Sydney will be an interesting one. Whether he gets some attention from a James Jordan will be potentially. I don't see him going to a Bontempelli or anything like that. But yeah, I could see that potentially happening. But he's gonna have a week where he drops a 60 or a sub 80 score at some stage. So you got to prepare yourself for that. You just got a question mark whether is it worth having him for these weeks where he goes big for 130s, 140s, but he's going to have these weeks where he goes sub 80 at some stage. Overall, he's probably going to average 100, if not 105 potentially. So he's still an option, but he's not my favorite option in the world. So I won't push too much on that one. You are paying a premium price now though, in the 1 million. So for those sort of reasons, I think there's plenty more value to be targeting, like a Josh Dacos, who is about 100k cheaper, who can do a very similar output with a arguably better run, in my opinion. So for those sort of reasons, I go Josh Dacos over Bailey Dale. So that is the options there. A few others that I need to talk about down here. You're not trading in Holmes as good as he has been. It's again by next week. Same with Tom Stewart. Lock Whitfield would also be nice, but you can't do it this week, obviously with the buy. Same sort of reasons. Yeah, I think I've covered up a lot in this video already, and I have just ticked over the 1 hour mark. So I think I'll finish off there, just quickly touching off on my top 5 trading targets this week. So I probably have Kobe McKercher as number 1. I just think he adds so much flexibility to your trades. Whether you're doing a sideways trade from a premium to another premium, then your mini upgrade from 2 rookies up to a McKercher still gets you an upgrade in some sense. So I think he adds a lot more flexibility to that. Andrew Brayshaw's up there at number 2. I think he's just a super safe pick, and you want him for the remainder of the season, so he sits there. Tom McCarthy, if you're looking for a downgrade target, he's obviously the one. Even if he's not playing this week, just look at how your numbers are playing up this week. I don't think you're going to struggle this week, so I don't think you're going to miss him too much. But you want him next week particularly. Luke Jackson, number 4, sneaks in there just with the flexibility again. If you're a Gorn owner particularly, you can play him in the ruck line this week, but then he can move into the forward line in a few weeks' time, or even next week when he can potentially be a top 6 forward for the remainder of the year. And then Callum Mills, I think he's a very decent option at that price tag. So that is my top 5. I'll quickly show you what my trades are doing. It has changed quite significantly from what I showed you on Monday. I found something that I'm pretty happy with. It just feels right for some reason. I can't argue why, but I have traded at Max Gawn and I have gone to Luke Jackson. Now, that trading at Max Gawn doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence, obviously, for all the reasons that I've already mentioned, but I think if I'm just looking purely based on points for points over the next period of time, I think Luke Jackson can definitely match Max Gawn for that period of time, particularly the next 3-4 weeks. And obviously he gets the points on the field this week. I slot him into the ruck line particularly. And I do have a bit of a plan of what I will do with him later on. Obviously, Luke Jackson will go into the forward line at some stage, and I will trade in another ruckman at some stage, whether that is a Marshall or a Max Gawn in, say, 4 weeks' time when he comes off that tougher run. We'll wait and see. So I'm pretty confident of that. Sorry, I'm stuttering my words now. Talking for an hour does definitely strain the body a lot, but it frees up 300k, so that means I'm able to go Ashcroft down to McKercher, and that also means I can get an upgrade from a Moraeus. It could also be the likes of a Cleary or even a Lohman. I do have that money in the bank a little bit to do those sort of options. To also a Callum Mills, who again is a bit risky. So going from one premium to another premium, but then also going 2 rookies down to up to 2 mid prices is a very good option in my opinion. It also means that I have 19 very solid players this week, only having the 2 round 15 players on the buy, particularly just being Dawson and Rankin, and obviously Tom McCarthy, but 3 players in total. So expecting a pretty decent week this week particularly. But also heading into next week, I already have 17 solid players before trades. So yeah, hopefully I can do some decent trades next week and get another couple decent players in there to continue to improve my team, because yeah, haven't dropped back in ranking yet so far this buy period. So hopefully going to continue that trend for the remainder, and yeah, hopefully have a decent buy period. But yeah, that's it from me. This is how we're structuring up looping options. I guess I'm just going to loop between Angus Clark this Thursday night, see how it goes. But realistically, I've got Callum Mills in that line now, so unlikely that he'll get a run. Johnson, I will be looping with the likes of Finn O'Sullivan. If it's not Finn O'Sullivan, then it may be a Boxall if Boxall does get named. So we'll see how it sort of plays out. And fingers crossed, one of these two sort of get named. Hopefully it's a Ted Closey, just with the break-even side of things. And that can be my 22nd player, because at the moment I'm only going to be playing at 20, 21, just with obviously not having a playing F6 at this point in time. So, but I'm happy with that. Like I said, I've got 19 very solid players plus a Johnson in there as well. So theoretically 20 very solid players. So theoretically I don't really need 22 players on the field this week, because probably it's going to drop off anyway. So that is my team. Hopefully I've answered all your questions in this video. Hopefully it's been a good trade mode. It's been a very interesting week with a few interesting topic of discussions with some premiums that need to be traded out. So, but I will leave it there, guys. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Please leave a like, subscribe, do all those great things. If you have any questions, drop them down below. Go to my QU link, do all those good things as you always do. Besides that, I will see you guys in my next video, which is captains tomorrow. And hopefully you guys have a great week ahead of you. See you then, guys. Bye.